if the real Anthony Fauci, the book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is not, if it's not accurate, he would be sued.
I'm going to try to talk to you a little bit about what Tony Fauci did and how this happened to our country. 3 weeks after 9/11, there was an anthrax attack. They blamed it on Saddam Hussein. We went to war with him because of that. It turned out that it came from one of 3 U.S. military labs. The lab that it almost certainly came from was by a vaccine maker who is partners with Tony Fauci. It's called Emergent, one of the COVID vaccine makers. And the intelligence agencies, which were, how many of you have heard of Event 201? Event 201 is a simulation that they did right before COVID hit. Actually, it was in October, so it was already circulating. And it was a drill for how to handle pandemics. But it didn't do the things you would think they would do, like how do we fix the VAERS system to make sure that we get good data? How do we create isolation hospitals where older people who have COVID, we can send them there instead of sending them to nursing homes? How do we develop therapeutics like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, off-the-shelf therapeutics, and do it very quickly? How do we get doctors together and to talk about what's working? How do we tell people how to bolster their immune system? How do we stockpile vitamin D and get it to every black person in this country because they're all vitamin D deficient? How do we do these things? They didn't talk about any of that. What they talked about was how to turn America into a totalitarian state. How to impose censorship. In my book on Fauci, I've been able to find 22 of those simulations. And they have been practicing this for year and year. It's all sponsored by the CIA, as I demonstrate. Fauci and Bill Gates play key roles in them. Bill Gates called Fauci in 2000 to his home in Seattle, $147 million home, 40 acres on Lake Washington. He sat Fauci down in his library and he said, I want to propose to you a partnership, that you and I work together to vaccinate the world.
For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.
The story in my book tells exactly how they went through that. And the story of these simulations is critically important because it was the way that they prepared. They didn't just have a few people involved. They had hundreds of thousands. Cops these were all top secret. Police officers in every community in this country, healthcare workers, first responders, were all drilled in this. How to censor, how to silence, how to impose tracking and tracing, how to do control. So they all went through these drills again and again, and it was a way of drilling and practicing a coup d'etat against American democracy. All of the techniques they use, I've spent a lot of time studying the CIA because my family was in a 60-year fight with them, and I wrote a book about that battle called American Values. But I've read all of their manuals, and they have techniques for going into indigenous countries and causing chaos, shattering the societies, destroying the economy, creating social distance between people so that there's no unit cohesion. And then when everybody is demoralized and destroyed, coming in with a centralized control and imposing, as they did with all of us, they locked down America in a hostage taking. And they impose something that is part of their technique, which is called Stockholm Syndrome, where the captive becomes grateful to their captor and identifies with them and understands, comes to this belief that the only way that they can save their lives is through absolute obsequious obedience to their captors. And all of these drills were intended to impose and to induce that condition in the entire public. And I'll tell you one other thing. The CIA, which I show in my book, the CIA did a series of mind control experiments back in the 60s and 70s called MK Ultra and Project Artichoke. And one of the famous experiments was called the milligram experiment. And the milligram experiment, and you guys look it up, milligram experiment. What they did is they brought volunteers from every walk of life, college professors, construction workers, everybody. They put them in a room with a doctor in a lab coat, a figure of authority. And he would tell them, turn up the electricity and shock the person who's in the next room. That person was an actor. And they would tell him, turn it up higher, turn it up higher. It went into the death zone. 67% of the people put it into the death zone, even though many of them weren't crying at the time. They were begging the doctor not to make them do it. And what they found was that using authority, particularly doctors in white lab coats, 67% of the public will violate their own conscience and do what they're told. All of this was orchestrated. They put doctors in charge of America, speaking of authority, never showing us any science, but ordering us what to do. And as you read my book, you're going to see all of the direct CIA involvement. And I name the person, I name the officers, year after year that were directly involved, partnered with Bill Gates, partnered with Tony Fauci, creating these scenarios in anticipation. And then, of course, they're brewing up. I'll tell you a secret that I talk about in my book. I'm going to shut up. Okay. You guys are the only people who know this, okay? I'm going to ask you to buy my book, which all of my profits are going back to the CHD. It was with a Wuhan lab, okay, in 2014. The reason that Tony Fauci was doing gain of function is because after the anthrax attack, billions of dollars started pouring into bioweapons research, and Tony Fauci needed to get his share. So he gets $6.1 billion from us, the U.S. taxpayer. He gets $1.6 billion every year from the military, from BARDA and DARPA and the Pentagon. And that is for doing bioweapons research disguised as vaccine research, because they're the same thing. It's called dual use. In 2014, a bunch of its little creatures escaped. They didn't injure anybody, but there were real scares. And people found out about it. And 300 top scientists in this country wrote a letter to President Obama saying, you got to shut down Fauci. President Obama ordered Fauci to stop. Fauci stopped 21 of the experiments, but the worst ones by a psychopath called Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina. He kept going, and that is almost certainly the one that produced this COVID-19. Plus, he moved his money offshore out of the nosy oversight of the White House to the Wuhan lab. The Wuhan lab was built by a French company called BioMiro. That company, and this is something nobody knows, but it's in my book, and you guys are the only people who know it. That company was built by BioMiro, and BioMiro contracted with the Chinese to install what they call a negative airflow system, which is a critical piece of infrastructure for a lab. Because you don't want air going out of that lab. The air can only go in and nothing come out, because those viruses are so tiny, you can't filter them. So they're going to get out if you have any air coming out. So this infrastructure piece is very complex and very important. And BioMiro was contracted to put it in, but guess what? They never did. And the CEO of BioMiro was a French man called Stéphane Bancel. Stéphane Bancel today is the CEO of Moderna, which is the company that has made billions and billions. They now have a net worth of $60 billion because of that escape. And I wrote a letter to him and asked him about this sequence, and I never heard back from him. But I have it very well documented. So what I want to ask you to do, a lot of you want to know how to help. One of the ways you can concretely help is by going on Amazon, or we pass out little cards here, and order my book tonight. And the reason I'm saying that, again, I don't make any money from it. It all goes to CHA. But if we get up over 10,000, we've pre-sold 9,700. If we get up over 10,000, it has to go on all of the bestseller lists. If we get to 20,000, the New York Times needs to put us on there, and that will kill them. And if we go to 10,000, which we could do tonight with your help, only 300 of you have to sign up tonight. We stick it to Amazon and Jeff Bezos. So, but it is an important book because it tells the story in a way, not just Republicans and people who are already awoke about this can understand it, but it's going to tell that story in a way that every American is going to look at it and say, holy cow, this is what happened to us. It was all planned. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy.